What is going on, fellas? Sorry for the late video. That's on me. I should have been better on time, but at least it is before kickoff on Sunday. Recap real quick. Last week, Brad beat me 127 to 113. Matt beat Dooley 120 to 111. Bobby beat Carbs 140 to 116. Rusty 100. Ted 76. Sidnam 109. Reed 94. Gaddy 103. And Tyler 98. So that is quick recap from last week. I know that was a little while ago. But we'll get right into it. I know you guys are busy. I know there's not a lot of time left before kickoff. But Tyler's still at 12. I mean, again, we went over the picks last week. We kind of know how his team is set up. But I will say, almost beat Gaddy. If Dak had played a little bit better in that Monday night game against the Cardinals, we're talking about maybe the biggest upset of the year. So Tyler really close to getting a win there, and just didn't come through for him. So now he's sitting there at 12. Ted's at 11. Again, still kind of in the same boat we have going on here. Ted's team is what it is. We kind of know who the bottom two in the league are. But I will say, Troy Franklin looks like a player. I mean, I really like what I've seen from him so far in his second year, wide receiver out of Oregon for the Broncos. You could see him maybe start to get more of the looks there with Bo Nix, and obviously they played both at Oregon too. So I really like what Troy Franklin's done this year. Scored a touchdown on Thursday Night Football, the only touchdown that was scored on Thursday Night Football. Or the Raiders, Genty scored another one too, but it really was a stinker of a game. Sidnam's team at 10. Again, we kind of talked about where his team looks at with Warren and guys like Judkins. The future can be bright for Sidnam's team. The only thing I do like is I think Brissett being in Arizona and not having Kyler Murray be the starter there, I think that's going to be a good fantasy quarterback option because I think that's helped McBride, that's helped Marvin Harrison Jr., and does get a really big win over Reed after Reed's team kind of took, a poo-poo. But Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley also were on bye, so he has both those guys. That's tough to really tough to judge there. But Sidnam's team is still at 10. Bobby's team at 9. Man, what a roller coaster his team has been, because you look at Brock Bowers, has 43 points and change on Sunday, and then has one catch Thursday night. I don't know what you do if you have Brock Bowers. It's just so frustrating. The guy's really good, but the Raiders are not good. And Genty gets a touchdown, but it was, he hasn't done much so far. Marv, though, could be a better option now with Brissett being the quarterback. So I still got Bobby's team at 9. I know the record is 4-5, and there are a lot of teams in that 4-5 range at this point. But I got to go Bobby at 9. Dooley's team at 8. Injuries are kind of killing him. If he had a Marion Hampton playing, and he was playing at a high level before, we could be talking about, Dooley's team being friskier for the playoffs. But I think just with the lack of running back depth that he has, I just don't know if he has a chance to push for the postseason. So, but Dooley's team is sitting at 4-5. My team at 7. It's been a disappointing season. There's just no other way to say it. It's been really disappointing. My team is, I think, better than where is better than 4-5. I do lead the league in points against, so that is also another factor where, I'm somewhere in the middle of the pack when it comes to points for, but I have the most points scored against. Like, for example, you look at my points against versus Matt, I have over 200 points scored more against me. So, listen, it's no one's fault. It is what it is. My team could be playing better. Wide receivers, have been skeptical, but my team's had a disappointing year. But I'm not done yet. I still think I can make a run, but losing to Brad last week did really hurt, and that was a bummer. And Jahmyr Gibbs did nothing, that's just rare. He's always done something this year. So Rusty's team at 6, but I have a feeling Rusty's team is going to start to make some moves up toward the top of this power rankings, because I really think his team is set up well. Drake May's got an easy schedule coming up, so I think he'll thrive. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor, despite not having the best week, still a really good fantasy option to have. I like the way Rusty's got his team set up now, and even though he's at 6, I think he can climb up the ladder. Carbs at 5. Now, I know it's a lot to go from 2-5. But I also am in the thinking that I had last week that I think, you know, they're all pretty close. The game 2-5 are all really close. It's a coin toss. Carb's coming off a bad loss. I don't think, even though yes, he was at 2 last week, goes to 5. It might be a big drop. I still think his team is okay. I still think he's going to be fine. I think the fact that he's 6-3, the other teams ahead of him are 7-2. I got to take that into consideration a little bit. But Drake London, one of the most underrated receivers in the league. I think he's just an absolute stud. It's just going to be, are the Falcons going to be, like the Falcons, which they fucking blow games, like they did last week. But Drake London is a really good player, and I think he doesn't get the credit he deserves going around. So Carbs at 5. I got Gaddy at 4. I'm the second most disappointing team this year. Gaddy's got to be number 1. I mean, with that team, how is that team 5-4? It's crazy. And you think about it, if Dak plays a little bit better on Monday Night Football, he loses to Tyler and he's 4-5. And we're talking about a completely different situation. The points for have been there, there's no doubt. But as long as you get in the postseason, that's kind of what you got to be at this point. The Dodgers were the 3 seed in the playoffs. No one really said, everyone, did you really buy the Milwaukee Brewers? Like they were the 1 seed. Like, did you really buy the Brewers? So it could be like that situation for Gaddy's team. But, the clock's tick, 5-4. I think he'll get in, but the team has been very disappointing this year. And I think I think we can all agree on that. Brad at 3, great win last week. Again, McCaffrey has just been a monster. He's been healthy, which I think has been huge, and especially because San Francisco really doesn't have any other options besides him. 7-2, sitting there at the top of the division, top of the league. Just need Nico Collins to stay healthy, which I think he, as long as he is and Stroud is, I think that's going to be fine. And Chase Brown started to pick it up too for the Bengals, where their offensive players are just going to be on point because they're going to have to score 50 points to beat some of these teams because their defense is just awful. Matt, 4 in a row. Really starting to play. Really, team's starting to play better. I really like what I've seen from Rico Dowdle. I really like what I've seen from DeAndre Swift. I know Monangai had the big game. He has the handcuff there. I traded him, of course. But Swift had a really good year. And I still think with Ben Johnson, knowing him from Detroit, I still think Swift's going to be a viable option. And it seems like they have some good stuff. And by the way, they're playing the Giants this week. So Swift's going to probably run for 3 touchdowns against that defense. So Matt's team's in a really good spot. I think you Baker comes back. You have that option. You got a couple quarterback options. The depth is there. If you get anything from Garrett Wilson, who knows? But 7-2, him and Brad are in really good spots right now to go and make the playoffs and potentially even get the first round bye. I'm still putting Reed's team at 1. I know Reed's 6-3, and I know Reed lost this week to Sidnam. All fair, but he didn't have Saquon and Jalen Hurts last week. Either one of those guys plays, he wins, and we're talking him and being 7-2. Still is the top of the leaderboard in points for, with Nakua and Amon-Ra and Trey. Especially with Trey McBride, I think his stock goes up. I think his stock goes up with Brissett. So I just really like what I've seen so far from Reed's team, and I'm still going to keep him there at number 1 for now, but that might change as we come up for the next week. So that is our recap for the power rankings. We go into this week's matchups. I play Tyler. Tyler, I got to beat you this week. So otherwise, if I don't beat you, then I don't deserve to make the playoffs. I'm sorry. Reed and Gaddy, big matchup because if Reed's team got 9 points on Thursday night. So Gaddy doesn't win that game. He goes to 5-5 and Reed goes 7-3. It's, there's a lot of teams that are winning games that, 5-5, 500 might not get you in at this point. You're 7-7, that might not get you in. So this is a big game for Gaddy. He's really got to win this one, but he's going up against a tough opponent there. And Reed. Rusty versus Sidnam. Sidnam's been scrappy. He's been kind of playing spoiler on some of these bigger matchups. But I think Rusty's team gets it done this week. I think his team's looking much better. Ted's team gets out to a pretty good start on Thursday Night Football, but there's been a lot of guys that have already played. Expect Carbs to take care of business there and bounce back from what was a bad week last week. Bobby versus Dooley, pretty close matchup. Genty getting the touchdown kind of helps him for the week, but what are you going to get from the rest of the team is kind of a question mark. But getting nothing from Bowers doesn't help. It's going to be really close. And then Matt and Brad. this is the big matchup. This is the matchup of the week because one of these teams is going to go to 8-2. And even if they lose, all right, 7-3, you're still in really good shape. But either Brad or Matt are going to go to 8-2, and they could have especially if Reed loses to Gaddy, they're going to have a 2-game lead in the top of the standings, and that's going to really kind of solidify them at the top there. So matchup of the week between Brad and Matt. So that is huge going into week 10 here. So that is going to do it. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Enjoy your Sunday, and we will see you later.